Welcome to my backyard.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming on the Eddie Conversation podcast. You are Celeste Tauchar.
Yes, great pronunciation.
And your, what do we call it? Like your artist name or your alt identity? Talker?
Yes, all of the above.
Okay.
Talker. The artist known as Talker.
Yes, the artist known as Talker. I am excited to talk to you because I guess like this is my first time meeting you in person. Mm-hmm. I recently, I think I discovered you when I was looking for music for my movie, and I was interested in talking to like independent artists in the LA area, and I forgot how specific. I didn't go back and research what I Googled, but you were in some sort of like top up and coming artists of LA in some capacity.
Great, love to hear that.
And me and my roomie were actually looking into trying to see if we can collab with some artists to get some music video experience, and that's how I first actually reached out to you.
That's right, yeah.
And I was super stoked about Personal Space.
Yeah.
And I mean, lo and behold, I didn't get to make you a music video, but we can blame COVID for that. I'll just blame COVID.
And it was like the video for Personal Space was already in motion. So it was like one of those things, you know. But yeah, here we are.
So since then, I had the chance to kind of like regardless of what happened, I was stoked about your EP Wax, and I wanted just to talk about you and like I guess I haven't had the chance to talk to too many artists in the music space, so I'm curious, being that you've been pursuing it for forever,
right?
On your approach and I guess that specific EP and that kind of stuff. I don't know where you want to start.
Yeah, I mean it's all very broad.
Yeah, start with Personal Space because it's my personal favorite.
I mean,
or how it works.
Yeah, basically, the long story short of like a quick background, you know, is like. I think music is kind of one of those things where for a lot of people, there's no like start date of, I now have decided that this is what I do. It's like something that you just always do. And it's, at least for me, it's something that I've always done. And yeah, so I have to date put out 2 EPs, and the first one, I mean, it's kind of been cool. Like they've just been building, you know, with each song and each record. And I think that's kind of the ideal way to do it, is to like have that slow growth and be picking up like real fans along the way, as opposed to, you know, having something work out overnight with the internet. I mean, that would be great. That's always great. But I think it's, I think there's less longevity in that. So with Wax, I basically, as I was putting out my first EP, Horror Films, I was also writing and recording and working on new music, and that was Wax, or what would eventually come to be Wax. And yeah, Personal Space, I mean, I wrote that song like maybe 2 years almost to the day ago. I wrote it in November of 2018. And yeah, I mean, it's just like about anxiety, and I think, you know, a lot of us who experience that kind of thing, and I think a lot of creatives experience that kind of thing, it's like sometimes you just feel like you can't get any personal space from yourself, from your head. And I kind of wanted to, I was in like a particularly heightened version of that at the time. And I wanted to just kind of write about that and have a song kind of singing to myself to leave myself alone. And yeah, I mean, it took on the life that it did with the production and the instrumentation and everything. But yeah, I mean, I didn't really I'm just picking up leaves
Yeah,
and weird
I guess for
stuff
those
all
that
over.
aren't watching, we're in your backyard right now in November, and
Yes.
we're hoping the weather holds up.
Yeah, I
It
think
should be
it
fine.
will.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it should
it's
be.
nice to be outside. It's actually like really nice out.
Hmm.
I'm happy. It's just like you gotta just like cross your fingers that it stays that way.
Yeah, because it rained yesterday.
But I think it's not
We'll
supposed to.
be good. We'll be
Yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah.
But
But yeah, basically, it's so funny because Wax
hmm
came out. It came out in March, but
hmm
it really feels like it came out in like such a different
yeah, it came out in
universe.
early
It
March,
came out March
so
6th. It came out. I was able to still do like 2 release shows. Like I played emo night and I played the
hmm
bootleg, and then 2 days later it was like, okay, no more shows, no more nothing. So
yeah.
I just kind of flew under the radar with that. But yeah, in turn, like that, it really feels like I did not put it out this year. Like it's
Does it?
such a different universe that we all were living in. So it feels even longer in ways.
Hmm.
But it's funny because personal space, I think, ironically, like it became more relevant, at least for me,
Yeah,
in all of this
we're all
as we're,
stuck.
yeah, we're all isolated and like if you couldn't get away from your thoughts before,
Good luck.
yeah, and I don't know, I think I was like really feeling that way, especially like around the time that I was working on a video and releasing that. Now it's kind of this weird thing where this is just our existence. And I
Hmm.
think that like we're all trying to kind of figure out ways to get creative and be able to like enjoy life while like safely working within these new parameters that we're going to have for a while. But yeah, I mean that's kind of the origin of that song and
Well, I guess like I'm curious to. I guess we can come back to the music in a
yeah.
bit, but I am curious to hear about what that was like for you. Being that I guess there's some like you said, it feels like it's been
Yeah.
a long time since those days of going out in public and
Yeah.
singing your stuff. So, uh, being that you had prepped for that, you were able to do a couple of shows, and then the
Mhm.
world shut down,
Yeah.
and then now, like you said, this is our existence. What what has that evolution felt like so far to you, and where is it? Because I'm not like I'm in the film space, so I think
Mhm.
about productions coming back a little bit, and people are
Right.
trying to get stuff done, and it's still kind of weird, and some people are taking it seriously, some aren't.
Right.
But like I've seen you're pretty active on social media in terms of spreading awareness of different topics and stuff,
Mhm.
and one of them is being like the I don't know like not like the independent music space, like I don't like the venue
Like
space.
Miva.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
So I don't know. I'm very curious about that side of things
Yeah.
and what there is to go back to, like all that kind of stuff. But if you want to,
Yeah. I mean, we could make the
start
entire conversation about just this.
let's start from the beginning and just go
Yeah.
from there. See what happens.
Okay. Well, I'll kind of start with like my personal experience with it and how that's shaped into
Yeah, yeah.
how it relates to everything. Blah 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 blah. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I put out Wax March 6th. The following week, everything fell apart,
Right.
and oh,
The
that's the
airplane.
one
No
the one
worries.
bad thing about being outside is airplanes.
Noise.
I think we're like in like a track that the Burbank airport flies over us here, but we're good.
Well, it
It's
is.
fine.
It's just listeners will understand.
Yes. It's nice outside. We're in a pandemic. Better to be outside, such is life.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I think for me it was kind of this thing where like Wax like as
Mm-hmm.
an EP and like building up to that, there was a lot of growth happening with my music that I still have and everything, but like in that moment there's a lot of growth
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
happening, releasing stuff and playing shows and getting some offers for different opening slots and stuff like that, and we were set to do 5 showcases at South by Southwest.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And that, like,
So I didn't even know South by did live show. Yeah.
yeah, well, it's funny when you're like so like in your own industry, in
Right,
your
right.
world, because for me, like, for years I did not know that they did film
They did a film
stuff.
festival.
And yeah, it was kind of weird because, at first, before it got fully shut down, a lot of people have criticized certain elements of South by now
Mm,
because, when it started, it was very like DIY,
mm,
very punky, like very like, and I don't mean that in a genre sense, but I mean that in the sense of like all of these places were just like hosting live music. It was just like that was the thing, and
mm-hmm.
then it got very corporate, and now you have Facebook as a sponsor, TikTok as a sponsor, like all these different things, and they all host their showcases and all this stuff. So this year, I think TikTok and Facebook were the first to pull out.
Mm.
And at first, people were kind of stoked because it was like, we're still going to go. It's just going to be a little bit more like it used to be.
Yeah, yeah.
It'll be fun and cool. And I remember, like, me and my band, we were like, are we still going? And we're like, we're just gonna avoid large crowds. Like, it's fine. We'll be able to do this. Like, we can avoid large crowds. Which I'm like, I've been to South by. Like, you cannot avoid large crowds.
Mm-hmm.
But that was like, we were like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's what we're gonna do. And then the day that my EP came out, beautiful.
Yeah.
The day that the record came out was March 6th. On that day was when they officially canceled it.
Oh, dang.
We were in rehearsal for emo night that night, and we were like, oh, this is canceled.
Mm-hmm.
But it was kind of weird because some of the there's like official showcases and unofficial showcases. And the unofficial ones, it's like just like some of the bars and restaurants in the area.
Yeah, yeah,
will,
the
like,
auxiliary kind
yeah,
of.
exactly. And so, I had some of each, and so the official showcases got canceled, but the unofficial ones, some places were like, well, we're a venue and we host live music, so we're still going to do our show. But, let us know if you're going to back out. And everybody, myself included, I think like most people backed out, and it was like, this just feels kind of weird and whatever. So, like, none of it ended up happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was like the beginning of like, whoa, this is real.
Yeah.
But it was still like, I think everybody, not just in music, but like everybody across the board, like naively thought that it would be a couple months.
Yeah. I heard you on another podcast talking about summer plans and kind of stuff like that. But yeah, we didn't know. I guess I'll interject really quick with South by was definitely the beginning.
It's like mid-March.
Yeah, because like I was a script supervisor on a short film that got accepted into the film festival. Like, I didn't have plans to go or anything, but I know like the director and a lot of the people involved, similar to your thing, is like that was their big opportunity to be in a space with all the people and use that as like South by's legitimate platform to bounce off of.
Yeah.
And that being pulled out from under you the one year that you, like, I don't know if it's it sounds like a similar thing where like South, do you get any, I guess in the film side, is they still had like a the virtual film festival.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't have that.
And they still get the laurel.
Right.
And they can still say they got accepted into the thing. I don't know if there's any.
There's not really that for music because it's just like, it's
that you were gonna play.
Yeah.
And that you've been booked there before. Like, I don't know if that's a.
It's less of a. I think that in music, I think in some ways, I mean, the film industry is constantly changing as well.
Sure, yeah.
But I think in some ways the film industry is still a little bit more traditional in the sense of like, if you apply to a festival and get accepted, you can screen whether it's virtually or in person, and then it's like, various buyers or whatever might be there and they view it, and you can say, oh, our film got this great accolade, whatever. With music, it's kind of more of like a gamble of just like who's going to be in the right room at the right time. And so, I don't think that people really care that much that you like got into South by. I think it's more like everybody from the music industry goes and is catching shows and
And you never know.
And the goal is to just like play some amazing shows, and someone is excited by your live set and then wants to know more. It's I think it's more something where it's like in that moment they feel like moved and inspired to whatever.
Right.
So it's a little bit different of a strategy, and so yeah, I mean, that definitely sucked. Like, it was,
Yeah.
I mean, the good thing is that like everybody's in the same boat, and I'll go in 2022,
Sure. Yeah.
but it is like, it would have been nice, but
Of course.
it is what it is. And I think at this point, for me personally, it's like, it's funny because March was, like 8 months ago, I think.
Yeah.
It was, but it feels, like I said, like it feels so much longer because the world has just changed so much. Time has become irrelevant. Like, it's just like a weird thing.
Yeah, we're in a pause button mode right now. Like,
and
nothing's
so
happening.
yeah, and so at first I kind of was like, at first I was like, oh my god, like I have to be putting stuff out because everything has like, also, at least in music, I don't know if in film it's the same, but everything has a much shorter shelf life now, I think. And before, things still had a short shelf life because of the way that the music industry works now and everybody's attention span and the way that we consume content. But it was like, you put out a record and then you toured it and people saw it in person. People, they had that concert ticket, they had that date in their calendar, it was in their awareness, they were excited, they saw you, they had that experience with you in real life. And now you don't really have that. So at first I was like, oh, everything has a short shelf life. I have to put more music out this year. I'm going to be irrelevant, like all this stuff,
Sure.
But then I was also like, at the same time, like, time is so weird right now. And so 8 months versus 12 months, like, it just doesn't really matter as long as you're like making good art and putting it out in a way that will best set you up for success. So as far as my own stuff, I mean, I am working on a new record. The production, I'm so sorry about all the leaves blowing. Listeners at home, pretend that you're outside in the wind and you're getting smacked in the face with a bunch of leaves. I also provided nice blankets for us, and I'm gonna put
I'll get into mine soon.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think so I've been working on a new record, and the production is basically done. It has to still like be mixed and mastered, so I won't be putting anything new out until probably the spring. But it's kind of something where I was like, oh, like I need to put new stuff out, all of this, and then I was like, in reality, I'd rather like keep my head down and make something really, really good so that I can start to put more stuff out next year and be able to release and plan with the current state of the world in mind.
Yeah, kind of see what different, because like what you were describing is your like tools are being stripped away because of the world. So it's like, how productive can you be with the tools you have left? So you might as well wait until the tools become available again, or different tools become the norm, or like whatever the case may be.
Or just like, I mean, not to toot my own horn here, but like, oh my god, not to toot my own horn here, but like, I think my record's really good that I've been working on, and I think it's because I took the time to do it right, and I wasn't like, I have to put something out. But it took a while to figure out what that looked like. And yeah, it's tough because at the same time, like, releasing music right now, those tools have been stripped. There's only so much you can do. I mean, you look at some artists who have had like their breakout moment this year, or like their viral moment, and that's great for them, and it's, everybody wants that. But it's also kind of a tough year for that because you can't tour, you can't really like fully build upon and capitalize on that moment. you can't tour.
You just gotta hope to sustain it until you can, I guess.
Right. And so it's like if you have that moment now, like then you really do have to be like putting more music out, trying to get, I don't know, like on the late night circuit to play like I don't really know what you do if you have a breakout moment right now. And so that was a big thing for me too, where I was like, I really like need to not worry about it and worry about like seeing certain, some friends of mine or people I know like having moments or whatever. It's like everybody is going to have their moment, and I would rather take the time to work on good music right now. And then
I guess okay, I'll go back to almost the South by time frame. Is that was canceled. You're trying to figure out, like, you just released this thing, you want to make sure you do some sort of due diligence toward that. And from my perspective, one thing I'm always a big fan of with artists is just and why I was kind of drawn to you so much, especially on top of the music. Like, I like to think about the artist in real life and the music. It kind of like combines for me a little bit. But was the hustle, and just like, oh, you're doing all those like IG lives and because we at the time, like you said, we didn't know how long the wait was going to be. So you were just trying to do what you could while you had those opportunities, and I saw that a lot. But I don't know if there's anything in that experience worth like looking back on. Or
I mean, I think that in a way it was good that the record came out right before the pandemic. I mean, yes, it would have been great to tour, but I think, I had, for example, like I had some friends who, they were still kind of in the middle of like a writing and production phase, and they had kind of put together like a plan based on the way that the world was set up before. And I think that like now, or like at the time, it was kind of like they were in a position of having to figure out, okay, like, can I still write this? Is my music even going to be, like, is the music that I was writing before, is that really going to be relevant to be recording now? And, like, all this stuff. Whereas for me, it was like the record was out, and yes, it would have been great to be able to tour, but I had something to promote where, like, I could use the internet to my advantage. And I did a little, like, live stream, quote-unquote, tour where I went live from, some different platforms of various like blogs and magazines and stuff that have supported me. And did a lot of live stream, did a lot of like just like more digital press stuff. And so again, not ideal, but I think having something to promote and being able to just be online was great in that moment.
That's something to put some time toward is always nice too.
Oh, completely. And I think that also, like, now people are so sick of, like, live streams and stuff online, and understandably so. And so I kind of think that, like, it was good that I had that moment of being able to do that at the start.
While people were still...
Yeah, because now it's, like...
Yeah, when I think about... Okay, how was the experience of... Because I know when I think about the virtual tours, like, for instance, I guess I've always been against... I'm not a big film festival guy, but then even now, so that they're all going virtual, it's even less so for me. Like, I don't like the experience of. It's the same thing as music, I'm sure. Like, it's the energy in the room that you get.
Totally.
Getting the instant reaction and the inclusion of the experience. When you go virtual, like, it's like, sweet, my film premiered. And there's like so many concurrent viewers, or I see the views, but you don't really get the... So
it's not an experience that you're sharing with people. And I think that like the same with like film and having in-person screenings, and as with concerts and live shows, it's like it's an emotional experience for everybody who's attending to be like having that shared connection in that moment. And then you, as the creator or the performer or, whatever it is, being able to have that give and take. Sorry. Well, I don't know why I'm saying sorry. It's the earth around us and her beautiful magnitude. I feel like this is our first, like, really, really windy fall day.
We're
picked a great day.
The weather's happening.
Weather is happening.
Okay, I guess for my experience, because I did tap into some of those live streams that you were doing, and it was difficult for me as, let's say, like a fan and a viewer, enjoying the experience to really get it across to you that, like, it's like, I'm here and I'm watching.
Yeah.
And, like, I'd hit the little heart button. And I'm like, is she getting it?
Right.
It feels like a weird Black Mirror experience where I'm like, please.
Totally. It's like you just don't have that like legitimate emotional like chemistry connection with other people.
Yeah.
And that is so important and such like a shared human experience. And yeah, I think that live streams are cool, especially like, you know, if it's like one or two and you're seeing it and it's an artist you love and they're playing music. And, you know, I think if it's also like something where like someone's doing something really cool or unique or like, I don't know, I've seen some people who are doing like weird stuff on their live streams, and that kind of thing is great. It's cool. It's like watching an NPR Tiny Desk, you know, it's a cool thing.
Yeah, sure.
But it's not a replacement for live shows. It's like its own thing.
It'd be like a nice additional seasoning on top to have every once in a while versus this is all you get, your entree.
Exactly. And so it's kind of just like, yeah, I'm at a point where, you know, we'll see what the world looks like when I start putting music out again, because we certainly won't be like in a live show space yet, because we're going to be in this for a while. And unfortunately, shows will be one of the last things to come back, even if you can go to a restaurant, you know? So we'll see. But yeah, I don't know. I have to learn from what's going on in the world and in that space to know what to do, because live streams are cool. I'll probably do them here and there as I put stuff out, but you know, it's like
so transitioning out of the live space, like the live stream kind of stuff that you were doing, what came next? Like, I guess were you already, because what I saw described, I forgot where I saw this or whatnot, but, or if it was on Twitter maybe, because I went through your Twitter. I stalked you for sure.
Love it. Due diligence.
You talked about how you set a goal of like, the goal is not to write. Like, I'm not going to put any pressure on myself to write anything. And then what you ended up coming out with was a full plethora of writing.
Yeah.
Once you release the pressure of this needs to get done.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you, how did that go?
Yeah, I mean, I think this was like not necessarily after the live stream space, you know what I mean? It was kind of like concurrent with it, but yeah, I love to write music, and I kind of hit this point of like, I think in LA especially, but in general in the music industry, well, I take back the LA thing because Nashville's like this too, but in the music industry, there's kind of this world of like, of co-writing with people, and like very like a factory, like getting together with people, getting put in writing sessions with different people through like your management or your ASCAP representative or like whatever it's gonna be, and constantly like churning out new music. And that,
you're talking about writing or just full music?
Writing.
Okay.
And that can be great in a lot of ways. Like, I've done that. I still do that sometimes. And like, you can end up meeting somebody who's like an amazing collaborator, becomes an amazing friend, and it's just like a really good way to like build up your writing skill set, especially when you're starting out. So that's great. But it also can feel a little bit robotic at times. And for someone like me who, you know, I have the Tauchar project and it is so personal for me, sometimes I don't get excited or inspired by the idea of like writing with a bunch of different people for various things, and then the song may or may not see the light of day. So when we moved into this virtual space, it was kind of like writing with somebody over Zoom.
Yeah.
It's hard enough, but like doing that with someone that you don't really know that well is just kind of weird. And for me, like, I tend to not really have that much trouble, like, getting to know people or, like, talking to people or working with them even if I've never met them before.
Yeah.
So it's not like I struggle that much with that, but I kind of just, like, didn't really feel like it.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to, and so I was like, okay, like, I'll do some writing with some of my friends over Zoom, but I'm not going to do, like, the hamster wheel.
Mm-hmm.
And that ended up leading to some really, really great songs
Mm-hmm.
because it was, like, just with my friends and
Yeah.
like, chilling. And, you know, since then, I have done, like, plenty of writing with new people because, again, I think at first we thought that this would be more temporary,
Yeah.
and now it's like, okay, well, we still got to continue to write and meet
Mm-hmm.
new people and expand that creative circle. So I do write now more so with people I don't know sometimes, but it's still predominantly, like, my main circle of collaborators.
Mm-hmm.
And so what came out of that was, like, a record, or, like, a group of songs, I should say, that I was just excited about because it felt very true to me, and I wrote it mostly with my super close friends. And yeah, so then it was kind of like, okay, like, how are we gonna turn this into a thing? What are we gonna do? And my friend, one of my close collaborators, Dan Sadin, he plays with me and writes with me a lot and stuff. He and his wife just moved up to Ojai, and he set up a studio in his garage and has, like, a whole setup. So I went and stayed with them for a couple weeks in September, and yeah, we recorded.
You got some stuff done.
Got the stuff done, and you know, it's been a process since then.
Simply, yeah.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's been a process. Like, we didn't finish in full in that moment, but now we're pretty much done for the most part, and it's been cool because it's really been like a full circle of coming back to the person, like, the small group of collaborators.
Yeah. So I guess a couple questions on that whole process. I guess I'll jump to where we're at right now.
Yeah.
But, like, so, like, Dan Sadin, you say, we'll collaborate. You'll collaborate on the writing side, and then he's also acting as, like, the producer of, like, who's the.
Yeah, it's all very collaborative. I mean, so I didn't write, like, everything with him for this record, but some of the songs, he wrote some of the songs with me, and then basically, you know, he and I were like, okay, like, I think this is partially influenced by COVID, mind you. In prior years and months, including on Wax, it's like, when you write a song with somebody or you write it by yourself, you know, you end up maybe, like, producing it with that person. As opposed to, like, more, like, old school, or, like, yeah, just, like, old school ways of doing it where it's like you have one producer, one person who's, like, working on the record with you. You're with them for, like, a month or two, and you're just, like, working on the record. It's much more sporadic now, kind of because of that whole, like, session, like, writing session culture.
Yeah.
Where it's like you'll have a day here, different producers for every song, and then at the end of the day you put it together and call it an album.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel like an album to me. That feels great, that feels fun, but it's not like a cohesive body of work.
Right.
In the same sense. And so we were kind of like, it was like, I'm not going to be going around to a bunch of different producers right now anyway, like, so we might as well just kind of hunker down and work on this. And I have a few other producers who are on the record because it was like we wrote a song together and it was just, like, a very special thing that we wanted to do together. But yeah, Dan and I are basically, like, working together, you know, in, like, a more executive production sense of, like, making sure all the songs are cohesive, making sure it feels like a record as opposed to a bunch of songs on a playlist.
Yeah. So do you handle because you're the voice, who's the other side? Because you do the instrumentals as well?
Yeah,
and then he does instrumentals too, and then...
Yeah, it's very collaborative.
And then that's all it takes is just you two, and you come out with complete tracks?
Yeah, I mean, it's not, there's definitely, like, a bit more to it in the sense of, like, my drummer, for example, like, we had him come up for a day, and so he played all the drum parts, and then we, you know, like, treated them and chopped them up to make sure we got, like, the perfect take, like, all that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, we're both just, like, playing, I'm all over that record playing a bunch of different instrumental stuff. Dan's all over that record playing a bunch of instrumental stuff. And like, yeah, I think this record in particular was super, super collaborative,
Yeah.
especially because like there were times that I wasn't necessarily at his house. Like there's some piano, I have a piano in there, and like there are some piano tracks on some of the songs that like I recorded, and then I would send him the files, or like I recorded all the backing vocals with my friend here at the house and then sent him the files. And so we tried to be in person as much as we could to really have that like real-time creativity, to be able to just like go for it and have fun with it. But there was a lot of that as well, of sending stuff back and forth. And then like with some of the other songs that some of the other producers are working on, it was like a bunch of file sharing. Like my friend Phil, who's working on one of the songs, he lives in London, so we did a couple Zoom sessions where he was working on it in real time, and it would be like 8 p.m. for him and noon here, and would work. But then like I would track something and send it to him, and vice versa. So it's been an interesting process for sure.
Yeah. And then I was gonna ask about the writing process in terms of when you're collaborating with somebody new, cause I guess I get stuck in thinking about writing a film, and are they primarily a writer and they're being assigned to you, or it's knowing that you're the one that's going to perform this song and we're writing for you, or how does like
sometimes,
or
I
is
mean,
it
it kind of just depends, honestly. Like it really depends on the session and who you're working with. You know, there's writing for a specific project, whether it's writing for Tauchar, or you know, if the other person has an artist project as well, you know, writing for them.
Okay.
There's
so
also,
it goes back and forth.
Yeah, and there's also a world of pitch, like in the world of pop especially, like, you know, a lot of like songs have multiple songwriters like pitching songs to artists and stuff. And then there's also, which you're more familiar with, I'm sure, like the world of like sync placement, and you know, writing. There's a whole, like, it's great when a song that is just your song is like picked up for a film or TV or whatever, but there's also a whole world of like writing specifically for film and TV, because there is kind of like a style in which, you know, it's like a bit more like dramatic and cinematic, you know, perfect for like these like wild scenes and stuff. And sometimes you'll have just songs that happen to work really well for that get picked up, but then sometimes it's like songs that were written specifically for sync. So it kind of just depends, but I think that writing like that is just like a skill. I do think that that's why it is good to do the hamster wheel a bit when you're first starting out, because it's a learned skill to be able to get in a room with somebody, or in a Zoom with somebody. And you know, sometimes it's someone that you've never met, but you just, you know, based on, you know, your publisher or your manager thought it would be a good creative fit. And then, you know, being able to just open up and lay your guard down immediately and like start talking about real things and writing about it. Yeah.
I guess like I'm curious about how much writing gets done, or what, if there's any, like when you're writing for your next album or whatever you want to call it, being that you said it's not really a collection that fits together as an album, so whatever that kind of turns into, like how much writing, if there's any goals in mind where you have lots of songs written but you don't necessarily know which ones are going to be produced or how you're gonna,
I mean,
or if it's kind of like,
I think that the way that it works for most people, and myself included, at least, you know, with this round, it's like you said, like I wasn't trying to pressure myself to write, and so therefore I wrote a lot. And so I had a handful. So the record that I'm going to put out, it's not a full album, it's an EP. But it's 8 songs. It's basically like the max number of songs I could put on it without calling it an album. That's kind of, because again, like with COVID, I don't really want to put out a debut album while I can't tour. And while things are so up in the air and while people's attention spans are so short. So it's an EP. But I would say, so it's 8 songs. I would say that before going into production, while I was choosing the songs for the record, I had maybe like 12 or 13 songs that I really loved.
And you're talking about the writing or stuff you've dabbled in to partially produce?
I mean, I pretty much will produce like demos of
Okay,
everything.
all right, okay.
So I had like 12 or 13 demos that I really loved.
Nice.
And from there, we pulled like the 8 strongest, or like not even necessarily strongest too, but like the 8 that felt like a record.
Yeah.
The 8 that felt like they all really fit together and like felt like a family. So yeah, there was like, and I had a ton of other songs too that I had been writing, but those were like my 12 favorite. And then we chose the 8. So
sure. Cool.
yeah.
Yeah, because I think about, I don't know. I guess I was more thinking about the collaboration process and the pressure in coming out with something, but it sounds like it's as chill as anything else. And in this particular case, where it's like, all right, let's feel this out. Sure, that's right for you this time. Or sure, that's right. Let's just write something and see.
I mean, I think that quite frankly, like, if you can't like be chill and just like open up to new people and work on stuff in that sense, like that's fine, but then like writing with people is probably not for you. And there are a ton of people who don't do a lot of co-writing sessions, who mainly just write on their own and have their artist project and release the music that they write, and some people do very well with that. And some of the songs that are on my record I wrote by myself, mind you. Like, I also write by myself all the time. I just enjoy collaborating because it's fun. So I think that it's like one of those things where you can you can totally make music and do the whole shebang without
including anybody, right?
Yeah, if you wanted to.
Yeah,
it's just if that's not your jam, then like that co-writing world is just not your track, you know.
Yeah, no, I'm always I always lean toward the collaboration side. I mean that's film in general, but like it's too, especially even on the writing side. Like I have a lot of difficulty. Let's say like if I have an idea for a script, I can write it out myself and get like the barf version of it out, but I have difficulties kind of carving it and shaping it and having it grow on my own. Like deadlines are tough, and the back and forth brainstorming of it kind of really helps bring out a lot that is difficult to come up with on your own. So I feel like, especially probably with in the music world, like having any excuse to be working with others is kind of like a cool thing, because otherwise it's kind of lonely, I would assume, otherwise.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, it's just fun to work with other people, and I think same with film. It's like having other people's brains on stuff just makes it that much better, helps it grow, helps it develop. And then, you know, when we are playing live shows, like having your band and having them help you flesh out like live versions and live shows and touring together. And it's just, I think, you know, there's like this quote, right, that's like, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And it's so cheesy, but it's like, it's true. You know? It's fun. I don't know. I love collaboration, and, you know, I'm lucky that I've been able to keep up a decent amount of it and
find some cool people.
Yeah, you know.
So let's talk about the venue stuff.
Yeah.
What do you know about that? How's it? What?
I mean,
because I know you were helping push. So, like, I think they're probably doing some similar stuff with like virtual fundraisers to get money in to help them survive through this time. I think I went to one of the links that you had shared prior, and I don't remember the website or anything, but like I hadn't seen any recent posts on there, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean,
what the plan is with all that. If you're tapped in,
I don't know that anybody knows what the plan is. Honestly,
no, sure,
like I think it's kind of one of those things where, so like in the U.S. you have NEVA, which is the I believe it's the National Independent Venue Association, and then you also have I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but like there's one for the UK. There's a bunch of them,
Sure.
and yeah, it's tough because there's a bunch of really iconic independent venues that are kind of like barely
Right.
hanging on by a
Yeah.
thread, and
Yeah.
a bunch that have closed. I mean, even in LA, like the Hi Hat closed, and I've played a bunch of shows there
Mm-hmm.
and been to a bunch of shows there, and um, some really famous clubs on the East Coast have closed, and so it's this weird thing where like I think what we're gonna see, the way that it looks now,
Mm-hmm.
okay, like without some like funding, some relief bill saving the day, I think the way that it looks now is like some of these venues might survive in the long term, but they're not going to be independent. Like they're going to get bought up by Live Nation or AEG
Mm-hmm.
or stuff like that. And, it's tough because it's like, I mean, in a way, that's like better than those venues not existing and those people going completely out of business. But it's like it all just like feeds into like the corporate music industry
Mm-hmm.
as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to being independent venues that are like buying and booking talent and like putting together shows
Yeah,
and
that are in it with you, kind of
yeah,
feel.
yeah, and it's just like once something is owned by Live Nation and stuff like that, it just makes it that much harder to like try to get on a bill or try to book a show at that
Mm-hmm.
venue,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's a small low capacity venue. The band that is a little bit more tapped into like you know that corporate side of things is going to be
Mm-hmm.
the one booking it, and it's just like I don't know, it's just like a sad day for like independent DIY music communities when
Yeah.
a big corporation comes in and buys it
Yeah.
up. So, I don't know. It's kind of like if that's what can save them, maybe that's not such a bad thing. But
Yeah, because I wasn't sure. I was almost kind of thinking that it feels like a weird best case scenario, but like closing the doors and then the same owner opens them up later on. I don't even know if that's a like just
well,
on the
that's basically what's happened already
okay,
because they're not
gotcha.
operating at
Right.
all. It's just that they have to be paying rent. That's what it is. Like they have to pay rent and
To keep the space,
to
yeah.
keep the space, and they're not making any money. So it's just kind of like that's what it is. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, hopefully, like in the new year, with everything and new
We'll see what
leadership, we'll see what
happens.
happens. Maybe
That's all
we'll
we
get
can
some
do.
sort of relief bill passed for the music and events industry, because that would be like there's only so much that has been done
Yeah.
right now, and like there hasn't been that much honestly, which is kind of wild
Hmm.
because that industry literally can't operate. Like it's not like it's not like it's a restaurant where they can
Do take out or
do
have
takeout or have a
capacity
patio.
outside. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like places are closing, the Hi Hat closed, Satellite closed. Like there's literally nothing
Yeah,
that can
yeah,
be
yeah, yeah.
done.
It's all the arts. It's the stand-up
Mhm.
comedy. It's
Yeah,
the
exactly, totally.
it's yeah,
So it's and that stuff is
theater,
so essential
life.
to life and our culture and I do think even for the people who don't have that understanding of the arts in the way that we do and that appreciation,
Hmm.
you can easily tie it back to like the general economy and the tourism industry and all this stuff too. Like it's an important part of our economy, even if you don't have an appreciation for culture and the arts. And so it's kind of like there's really no good reason to be just
Yeah,
letting these
just letting it
people,
die.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's so sad and like not,
Hmm.
yeah, there's just been nothing done.
Hmm.
So I don't really know. I don't know what it'll look like. I don't know how it'll play out. I'm just hoping that,
That it survives.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll just, I think that the music industry and like local music scenes are going to look really different after all of this.
Hmm.
I think a lot of people have left LA
Yeah.
A lot of people have stayed in LA too, but I know a ton of people who've left LA, and some of them say it's temporary, some of them say it's permanent. We'll see how it actually plays out,
What
though.
types of people are you seeing leave LA? Is it all type? Is it mostly the artistic folk, or is it
all types? But I mean, yeah, I think, if you're here for the music industry and you're paying a ton in rent,
right.
and there's no shows happening, if you can like go live with your parents or something,
right. Okay.
or like move back to where you're from and get a cheaper apartment somewhere. I mean, I had the thought, for me it's like I live here and I love my life here in my house here and my roommate, and I have a good setup. So for me, it didn't really make sense to do something like that. But I don't know, if I were living in like a crappy apartment, paying way too much in rent and living somewhere stressful and like all of this stuff, I would probably have moved home for a few months. Like, I don't know, I think it's tough, and I still am kind of like, maybe, and I'm lucky enough to do some like remote work for like my outside of music job, so I've been able to keep that a bit, but I'm kind of like, I don't know, like maybe I will go spend a month or two somewhere else just because, like, I don't know. I don't know if I actually will, but I get the sentiment of not wanting to be sitting in LA, like, not doing anything.
Yeah, I mean, now's the chance if you want to do it.
I know, it's kind of weird, right? It's like pandemic times everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're going to get to like fully experience living anywhere.
Right.
But at the same time, like, you're not missing anything here. You're not leaving all these shows and a community and networking and stuff. It's like, that's just not, everything's virtual. So you can do that from anywhere.
Right.
But, yeah.
So I don't know. I'm thinking about one question I had for you, because I'm not too familiar with the culture, I guess, but the live, like, it maybe a little bit more reminiscing on the good times.
Totally, right.
But how is it as an indie artist going into different venues? Like, how do venues vary and stuff? Like, how does, I don't know what my question really is, but like, let's say I'm from Reno.
Okay.
And I'm a big fan of like rock music. My dad was a big hard rock guy. And I know when I was younger, we would go to a couple of concerts like in small venues, and they're like, up and coming bands. And I would always kind of get a little, small venues always had this kind of this taste to me where sometimes like I couldn't hear the vocalist at all, and I'm like, I know this song, but I can't hear the guy.
Right.
And sometimes it's a good experience, sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because of the venue or if it's because of the artist or how that plays out. But I
think it kind of varies. I mean, you have to have like a good sound engineer, but every venue is different, and there are some venues that have horrible like acoustics and sound, and like the whole thing is kind of weird. And so it's ironic that those are like venues, right? The way that they're set up like that. But yeah, there are definitely some venues that don't have a great like natural sound to them.
Yeah, because then I think like, well, it's because it's Reno. And if, I was like, LA, I'm sure, being that there's just more people and more people legitimately doing it, that I'm sure.
But there are still like some venues that are better than others when it comes to the sound and stuff, even in LA. It's a weird thing. It's kind of like, it is kind of this question where you're like, why does this room not sound very good? Like, it's a venue, and so it should be the standard that it does, But yeah, there are just some that don't.
So what's it look like? Can you walk me through an event? And because I think you've equated it to, like, I think you said like, something about a smelly van and sweaty venues.
Yes.
And like, what's what does a day of a show look like? Like how much time
Yeah.
are you taking?
Well, if we're talking like being on tour,
Sure.
let's call it tour as opposed to LA, because LA, I'm here at my house until it's
Mm-hmm.
time to go to sound check. But if you're on tour, like you typically, we're in vans, we're not in a bus. Even when I've been touring with some other bands, as like a keyboardist, it's all been in vans and not buses. So, you wake up in the city that you just played in,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to drive, and depending on where you're going, that'll affect how early you leave, obviously. Um, but typically, it's like you wake up, you drive, and you head in straight to sound check at the venue in the next city.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You do sound check, get everything unloaded, set up.
And sound check is who's included in that process? Is it just the vocalist or?
No, it's the whole band. Like you'll
So you
play.
unload? Do you unload every?
Yeah, you
Okay.
unload everything, get everything set up,
Mm-hmm.
get all of your merch set up as well over in the merch area,
Okay.
all
All
that kind of
right.
thing. Like really, yeah, just getting everything set up. And you'll do a sound check, which is the whole band. So you'll usually play through like a few songs or a snippet of each
Mm-hmm.
song and try to go through like some different songs that might have different like sonic elements, so that you can test how all of that sounds in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Because some rooms are naturally like more bassy than others,
Yeah.
or have more high end or whatever. And then typically you'll like have a little bit of time between sound check and the show. And it depends on what order you are in the show too, because you sound check backwards. Like the headliner sound checks first,
Okay.
because you're setting up like in front of those people's stuff. Like if you're the opener, the other band's stuff is on the stage still. So you're the last to sound check.
Right.
Then you leave
Okay.
your stuff on the stage, then you play and take your stuff off the stage.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. So depending on what order you are in the show, that'll kind of affect when you're checking. So if you're the opener, you're like the last to check and the first to play. So you'll have like maybe an hour. Like your sound check will usually end like right when doors open,
Yeah.
and then you have an hour to like scarf down some food and play the show. But if you're headlining, you'll have a couple hours, which is always nice. And then you can go get some dinner and then play the show. And then afterwards, you gotta go to the merch table and like talk to people. And it's so funny, one of the bands I play in, they would always call it securing futures. So they're like, we're gonna go secure our future by talking to fans.
Yeah.
And
Securing
making
futures.
those connections with people. But and that's always
That's
fun.
cool.
And sometimes it ends up being a really late night. A lot of the times it doesn't, because you're just, it's a job like anything else. It is an amazing job, and it's so fun, and you're so lucky to, when you get to do that, but you got to do it all again the next day. And I think sometimes people like forget that when you're at the venue with them, because, they're just in that moment and so happy and excited to be there and everything. But you're like, I got to get up at 6 a.m. and
got another full day ahead, all that stuff. Yeah.
So I've obviously had like fun and wild nights on the road, but it's never like, that's not the general lifestyle of any touring that I've done, where you're like out partying super late. Like sometimes you do, of course, like it's life, but typically it's like you're out of there as soon as you can. And not that you don't want to spend time with people and be
secure
appreciative,
futures,
but exactly. But it's really easy to like get sick or just like feel like just absolutely terrible the next day and stuff like that. So yeah, it's exhausting, and quite frankly, like it's not a sustainable lifestyle. Like you can't do that like nonstop for years and years and years. And I think now, because the live music industry, we'll see on the other side.
Sure.
But and typically it's like live shows are kind of one of the only real ways to make money as an artist. So that's why you see, especially in the age of streaming, you see so many artists, like even bigger artists, just constantly on the road all the time, because that's like just how you make money and how you like make those connections with people.
And that's primarily from the ticket sales, or is that from the merch store?
Both.
Or just, I guess, the combo is kind of just the biggest take.
Exactly. So it's Yeah, but I don't know. It's not for everybody. I mean, I know a lot of other artists and people that I work with who don't really love touring that much because it's exhausting.
It's work.
It's work. You're away from home, from your, your significant other or your coffee shop that you like to go to, like,
Sure,
just the
sure.
things about life. It's never home, but I don't know, for me, I love it. You know, I could do it all the time. I think maybe I won't say that when I am back to touring and I'm like on
No,
the
no,
road for a
no,
year
for
nonstop.
sure.
We'll see,
For
but
sure. But it's a.
it's just fun. And if you're touring with good people, I've been super lucky to just tour with people who end up being like family to me. And I know some people who haven't been that lucky and who get tours and are playing with artists and it's not like that
Yeah.
dynamic.
It's
But
extra work.
yeah, but for me, I've gotten super lucky where it's like all really, really close people, and so it's just fun, and yeah, I don't know, it's a whole nother world. It's such a different
Yeah.
lifestyle.
Yeah. I'm thinking about the fan interaction moments, because like when I think about, even when I've gone to support smaller shows with people, that's back in Reno or something,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's hard to, even in the smallest of settings, I feel like it's difficult to get that one-on-one with the artist.
Yeah.
So how do you, I guess knowing that from being on the other side of it, how do you funnel through people and like get those experiences
Yeah.
in, and how does that go?
I think it's something where you just have to be like, in those moments you have to be really, really good at being present.
Yeah,
um
yeah, yeah.
because it's something where, yeah, totally, like, you have multiple people who want to talk to you, but you also want to be like genuinely connecting with the person in front of you and not like,
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I think
Yeah.
it just depends, but I try to make an effort to like be very present with somebody, but then to be like, kind of like segue the conversation
Yeah, it's
towards an
hard
end at
to.
some point, like,
Yeah.
oh, thank you so much for coming. Like, I hope you go home safe. Because I can see that somebody else is trying to get in there and I want to give them time. So, yeah, like having a genuine conversation with somebody, making sure that like I'm very present in what we're doing, but then kind of like checking myself of like, okay, it's been like
30 seconds.
30 seconds or 1 minute or however long
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
been, like,
It's just, there's an art to it on
there is.
flipping into the next person,
Totally.
and yeah. But
Yeah.
any memorable experiences on that, where it's like, or anything that comes to mind when that.
I mean, not necessarily. Like, I've been lucky where like pretty much everybody that I have interacted with in that sense is really like respectful and
Sure.
understands that they're not the only ones
Yeah,
trying
yeah,
to
yeah,
chat. But
yeah.
I mean, I think in general, like, you do sometimes get those people who want to just like have a full on in depth
Sure,
conversation
sure.
with you for an hour, and you're like, I can't. And there are some people who you
Yeah.
end up like chatting with, and you're actually like, oh wait, like, we have this thing in common, and we are chatting about this, and you like, on
Yeah.
occasion you do talk to people where you're like, I want to talk to this person more in depth, and sometimes randomly you'll be like, like, stay and have a drink with us after, like,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
I've done that a couple times actually, which is cool, and then you know those people, you have that connection with them and they become lifelong fans and you genuinely enjoy seeing them at shows and catching up and stuff. But I think for the most part people are pretty respectful of the fact that you
Well,
don't
yeah.
have
I
that much
guess I was
time.
almost thinking about the experience of like not expecting to hear such a genuine compliment from somebody, and like, or like something that maybe a normal fan wouldn't say, and it like almost like I imagine somebody says something to you and you're just like, oh my gosh, that brought me to tears, thank you for that.
I mean, yeah,
But
there have been some moments where somebody will say, that a song was really meaningful to them because it reminds them
sure.
of, somebody who's passed away, or like a really meaningful moment in their life, or things like that, and
Yeah.
that's always, it's cool. It's like, you're like, you're like,
It's
you
sometimes.
sure you're talking about my song? It
Yeah,
feels like
yeah. It could be
you're
hard to
talking about the wrong
process that
thing.
kind of stuff. Yeah.
But no, I mean it's cool, and there's some people too who are like, they really like. There's this one girl who she's super sweet and very cool. She lives in Pennsylvania, and a band that I was playing with, um, this band I play with, Friendship, we were opening for
Yeah, yeah.
Bastille a couple years ago, and she and her friends came to like multiple shows in a row. They were always in the front row, so you like knew there. And there's like
Oh, yeah,
there's
yeah,
a whole
yeah.
host of them, and so now like we know who they are, and we'll like interact on social media and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
And one
yeah.
of them, she like she like brought me, she'll like bring gifts, and she was working at Vans for a while. I don't know if she still is. She like brought me a pair of Vans to a show and stuff like that. And it's like, those are,
That's
it's
cute.
cute and it's fun, and you remember those
No, that's
people.
fun.
And
Yeah.
someone like that, it's like, it's kind of cool too, because those people, they recognize typically that, like, most of the time they'll recognize that like they do have that connection with you, so they'll like stand to the side while other people chat, and then you'll like chat with them later and like
Yeah,
have a
yeah.
drink and stuff, and so that's always fun. But yeah, I mean, I think that it's just kind of one of those things where you have to just be super present and like talk to people and care about them, because I mean, for me at least, like I genuinely do, like these are people who took the
Mhm.
time to
Mhm.
come see me play, come support, who found my music through some channel, and that is really meaningful. And so then I think it's when you make those genuine connections with people in those moments, it's rare, but it's cool when it
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
happens.
No, I think that's awesome. Yeah, time is I don't know. It's I don't know why I'm saying a cheesy thing here, but time is the greatest gift you can give anybody. So
Totally, totally.
so
Yeah. And it's
don't want to take it for granted.
yeah. And sometimes it's easier than others, and like I don't know, there's definitely some times where you're like, I've had times where I'm really really tired, and like
Mhm.
just you know it's like the eighth show without a night off, and you're like
Mhm.
exhausted, and you just want
You just want to go
to
sleep.
go sleep. And I've had times where I have like dipped out and not
Yeah,
chat
yeah.
with people, and it's like you kind of feel bad, and like, but it's also you got to take care of
You got to be
yourself.
healthy.
Yeah, so there's a balance for sure. But I think if you're not feeling like unwell and not up to it, like it's always worth going and chatting with people, and
Yeah.
giving them that time because they gave you theirs.
Yeah. Cool. All
Yeah.
right. Random question.
Okay.
It's not really random. I wanted to, in the article that I read on, where did I read it? Oh, on the Merry-Go-Round
Mhm.
magazine
Mhm.
article. They pointed out your Spotify thing, where you describe your music at the bottom of the Spotify, and I noticed it changed from what they mentioned in the article,
Okay.
and I was going to ask you about why it changed.
Interesting.
So back when this came out, which was like when your
Yeah.
EP dropped, you described your music as songs to lay on the floor and cry to.
Okay.
If you go there now, it says songs you lay on the floor and scream to.
I
So I was like, you changed cry to scream
think I was
at some
feeling
point.
more angsty for sure at some point. Yeah, I don't
But
know.
is it accurate? Is either one? Where do you?
I think it's something where for a while it was cry, and then I was feeling more energetic. And so then I was like scream. But I think they're interchangeable. I think typically
They're one and the same.
they're
They
one and
could
the
be.
same. You don't have to scream to be crying, but I think you have to cry to be really screaming.
You have to. Okay,
You know?
sure.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I was just feeling scream
Yeah,
more one
yeah.
day.
'Cause my imagination was like, oh, she probably read this article and didn't realize and kind of wanted to rebrand this whole. It's like, no, I don't want you crying to my music.
No, there wasn't that much thought put into that,
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah, yeah. I could tell, but no, I thought it was interesting. I'm like, oh, well, enough thought was put in to change the wording of it.
It's
So
true. That's true.
something was thought
Yeah.
about there. But I thought that was kind of cool because it's always difficult trying to. I'm not a big genre. I'm not a big category guy on trying to, because everybody wants to categorize music or categorize the genre of your film. Like, oh, like what do you make, or what's your thing, and then I don't know what your stock answer is to that, but
yeah, I mean, it's changed over time. I used to be like, it's grunge pop, because it was.
Okay.
I think. I don't know.
It was your interpretation of grunge pop.
Now I'm calling it like emo indie rock with glitter.
Okay.
Because I think it's one of those things where I think that giving people like a category, it can be helpful because it gives people like some idea of like expectation, yeah, and like, oh, I love indie rock, so as you know, like
sure,
that kind of thing is helpful, I think. But I also, I don't know, I just kind of intentionally, I think that my music has a sound because it's me and because it's all coming from me, but I intentionally like don't try to write to any specific genre. Like my new stuff, it doesn't necessarily have like one genre, and I think that some of the songs sound like different from each other, and I think that in general the record sounds like an evolution from the last. It doesn't sound the same.
How different?
I don't, not like
no, okay, so you say evolution, so it's more of all right.
Yeah, you know, it's not the same.
It's different.
Yeah,
But the same.
Yeah, it's not like I wrote the same record.
It's still you.
Yeah, but exactly, that's the thing. Like, it's all me, and it all does sound cohesive because it's all me, you know? And so I think, I think in some ways genre is helpful for that kind of thing, for people to know what to expect, but I'm calling it, like something along, we'll figure it out. I'll let you know when it's official.
I like the glitter edition there.
Yeah, like emo indie rock with glitter. Yeah. I think that's the vibe because, I don't know, it just gives me more of a sense of like this particular like visual art palette and the sky and space and a more like psychedelic visual palette in my brain. I don't think that it necessarily sonically reflects that. I don't know, but
sure, but it's what you pull from.
Yeah, and so I think it's just like shimmery and glittery in my mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I think it makes sense when you hear it. Put it that way.
Yeah. What is it like? How do you battle with the creation of your music and the evolution of yourself and the amount of time it takes to make the thing?
Yeah.
By the time you put it out, feeling like there's like that's not a proper sentence that I just asked.
No, I know what you're asking though. Yeah, I mean it's something where
how do you
it's
how
right.
do you go about it?
It's like like you wrote something at one period
like
of your
you said,
life.
Yeah.
And you're like recording it and producing it in another period of your life. And by the time you've like put together like a release plan and a marketing strategy and all that kind of thing, and you're releasing it, you're in a totally different part of your life. Yeah, it's a weird thing. I think that for me, I kind of have two answers because on the one hand, it's never like, it doesn't necessarily feel like the songs are in the past because I may have written them in the past. They technically might be about something of my past, but then as I'm producing them within the context of what I like sonically now. And then when I release it and I'm working on visuals for it and all of that kind of thing, you know, it's like a whole process. And I think that's similar with like a film, you know, it's like if you're going to write a film.
It's a forever process.
It's a forever process. And you're very close to it the whole time. And the way that you approach it is different with each step. And so even if I wrote the songs like a year ago, if I'm releasing the record, they're still relevant to me now because it's the way that I have been putting this whole thing together, you know? So in that sense, I don't necessarily find that it like feels like this whole thing of the past. But also on top of that, I will say like if you have like the whole record done and put together, and it's like, it's got its nice bow on it, like the songs are all done, the videos are done, all that's left to do is like create a smart strategy and release it. You can kind of take like your creative and emotional brain out of that and be like at least that's my plan with this record. It's like everything's going to be done before we release it. And so, yeah, I'm going to be releasing the music and promoting it and doing all of that. But as far as my creative brain, I'm going to already be like working on new stuff and writing and all that kind of thing,
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of like, it's like different tracks. And as a record moves from the writing track to the production track to the release track, it also shifts the different like mental and emotional labor that goes into each of those.
Yeah.
And like when you're promoting it, yeah, there's a lot of like work that goes into promoting it, but maybe like, yeah, you don't have to focus as much on like the emotional creative in that element, and then you can be like writing newer stuff.
Yeah, I guess like I think about if you were doing the live performances, I always think about, I guess it's because like I read this book, I got back into reading last November, and one of my first books back was called Daisy Jones and the Six, and it's like this fictional book about these artists in the 70s, and it's told in this way. It's like interview style where you just get insights from all the band members and everything throughout these years. And one thing that was one of the critiques of one of the like background members, not the lead singers, but she was talking about how she couldn't be a singer-songwriter. She didn't want to break off and do her own thing because of the pressures of putting yourself out there and having to relive those moments over and over and over again for the world,
Right.
and having to constantly draw from that stuff. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess that's more of what I'm curious about too, is like those different parts of your brain, but when you're performing the song, like I don't know if you've grown, if there's like this inner evolution where you're singing and you're like, this isn't really me anymore, but I have to pull from the old version of me, or
sometimes I think it's also, I think yes, sometimes you have to pull from that like headspace that you were in. I also think that songs evolve. Like
right.
it might technically be about something that happened last year or whenever, but just as the listener takes their own meaning and interpretation,
you can do the same.
You can do the same with your own songs. It might now, like I have some songs that I performed a lot on tour where I much more now I associate them with like tour memories more so than I associate them with a particular
with the
original thing, or like maybe I'm going through something where it's bringing that emotion out again, even if it's about something else, or with a different person or whatever that is. And so I think
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that feels like, I guess, probably I was going to say the healthiest way of going about it, where it's just kind of a natural...
Yeah, I think that's kind of like the way that most people do go about it, because you're always, sure, you can always like tap in and try to relive some of those moments, but I think like, as we go through life, it's just like, you're going to go through other stuff.
Yeah.
So when you're singing something, you might, in your mind, be thinking of something completely different than what the song is about, but it's giving you that emotional foundation.
Yeah. I'm just enjoying the sun right now. The sun feels
it's
really
like kind
good.
of perfect right now. We're in the sun. It's not too windy.
It's so nice. It's gonna go behind the trees soon, but
I know.
I did want to ask about when I think about myself creatively and transitioning. I'm curious about your transition from EP to EP, but I guess, okay, you've been pursuing music your entire life, according to you. I have been pursuing film for, let's say, like 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how different it is for you, being that it's been your first track for so long. But
Mm-hmm.
I have I don't have this issue often, but like I just made my first feature, and that process took forever. So by the time I'm getting to the end here on putting it out,
Mm-hmm.
I look back on it and I look at the how much growth I've had since I started, and it's tougher. I don't know if it's tougher, but it's hard to kind of think about me now, what I would have done differently if I can go back and
Right.
make certain decisions creatively. I'm like, oh, like I've grown and I've learned so much. I could utilize all this knowledge,
Right.
and it's because you can't really change much. You shot what you shot. You can edit it and
Mm-hmm.
stuff and make it work,
Yeah.
but um, it is interesting picking up new tools and new tricks along the way and utilizing them in future projects,
Yeah.
and then understanding where you're at when you made it. So I don't know how much that plays into what you're doing, and I guess that's kind of like the evolution of your EP to EP, right? Like
Yeah.
you don't do you look back on your old stuff and being like, oh, I could have done much better, or is it
No,
more
I
the
don't.
that's good,
Because I
don't do that.
think that I think that I think that it's great quality, but maybe I personally just didn't know as much of who I was as an artist.
Hmm.
But I
Hmm.
don't even know, like it's who I was at the time, you
No,
know?
right,
And
right,
so
right.
for me, I think maybe it's different than in film because I think in film maybe it's like you as a filmmaker have picked up these different like tricks and
Yeah,
tools
there's like
from the
tons of
technical aspect.
right, which you could incorporate as well.
Yeah, and I too have because I've been getting more into production and just like getting, more experimental with various, genres or ways of playing or whatever it is,
Hmm.
but at the same time it's like yeah, and in 5 years I'm going to
Sure.
have that. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
so I think, like I think it's well produced. I think the quality's great,
Hmm.
but like yeah, maybe I didn't have the same like artistic outlook or the same like knowledge of my instrument or of my own production skill or whatever, but
Hmm.
it's who I was at the time, and then Wax is who I was then, and I'm still proud of that record, but I'm more proud and excited about this current one, and I hope that that
Yeah,
continues to be the
yeah,
case
yeah,
with
yeah,
with
for
each one.
sure.
I mean, the goal should be that your work gets better with every project, right?
And you're always doing the best that you can with what you
Mm-hmm.
have available. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, I don't really look at
No,
sure, I look at maybe some like older stuff of like high school me and stuff where I'm like, wow, that's so bad. But it's
yeah,
also
yeah,
like,
yeah.
okay, but I'm like a child just figuring it out.
Yeah, I guess more for me, or maybe what I'm referring to. I don't even know. But I guess being that my thing isn't out yet, it's a weird feeling to have
Right.
going into the release of it and being like, oh, people are gonna watch this and think that I just made this like yesterday, but really I wrote it 2 years ago, and like it's
But
kind of like a weird.
I think that anybody in film and like, especially like as somebody who's like working on getting more recognition in the film industry and spreading the word about your work and meeting more people, I think anybody in film knows that it's a
Sure,
years long
sure.
process.
Yeah.
Maybe a random person
The
will be
average
like, they just
viewer.
did that. But,
Yeah.
I think that anybody who knows film will know that this is like a long process and that the next thing you make will be even
Yeah.
better and then the next
Yeah.
thing will be even better and so on
Yeah.
and so forth.
Yeah. I think so too.
Yeah.
But still,
But I get it. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I totally get that mindset. I think it's something that I think I used to feel that way more. And
No,
then I
but
kind of just was at one point it was like something that I worked on honestly where I was like I can't you
no,
just
your stuff is, I mean, really good.
thank you.
So I, yeah. I was gonna. Okay, what? I don't know. You're probably. I don't. Are you teasing anything about the new EP in any capacity? Like, what is there anything new and exciting that you're doing yourself as a creative? Like, even if it's a small thing, like you're gonna try to rap on one of your things or in a chorus or
There's nothing
anything
like
crazy.
that. There's nothing crazy like that. But no, I mean I think it's just something where it's just like good music that I was really hands-on with, and I had a really hands-on role in all of the production and the making of all of it, and it's just
Yeah.
very much me right now. And yeah, I mean, I haven't even like officially announced that it's coming out. I've been telling people that I've been working on new
Yeah, yeah,
music
yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff. So, but yeah, I mean, no, there's no like shtick
Sure,
per se.
sure.
It's just
It's just the natural progression in the growth of
yeah, and I
Talker
just think it's like
and
really really
the
good.
new awesome stuff.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be good. Like, and that's, I will say, like, my kind of my MO with it, the whole process is like, as I kind of mentioned, the goal is to have like all of the songs fully done,
Mm-hmm.
mixed and mastered, have a few of the videos already like done. Like, I mean, it's already November, but like, I'm hoping to be working on those like pretty soon. I mean, we'll see, but um, it also with COVID, it's like it's
Mm-hmm.
hard to get stuff done.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah.
lucky that my roommate's boyfriend is also a great filmmaker, so he's like in my COVID circle. So I'm like, you have to do all of my content,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, but yeah, just kind of like having everything done and ready to go. And that doesn't mean like every little last thing has to be done, but having it ready to go where I can really like set myself up for success in the best
Mm-hmm.
way of like the songs are done, the videos are done, we have a really smart timeline and release plan, and I don't have to be like scrambling to keep up and be finishing stuff for the record as I'm releasing singles, like
Yeah.
that's what I want to avoid. And I've
Mm-hmm.
had that in the past, and it's just like, at the end of the day, like you want to be able to give like, let's say some like journalist wants to hear the whole record ahead of time or hear a sampler or something like that. Like you want to be able to just like give them everything
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
not be like, so glad you liked the song. More to come in 2 months. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
you know?
No, for sure. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll I'll jump to the big question. It's not really the big question, but
Ooh, I'm excited.
it's a stressful one. I'm just curious about what the dream is.
The dream.
Yeah, what's the goalpost that that you've said that you're kind of creating toward? Is
Yeah.
that a thing that you do, or is it?
It is and it isn't. Because I think that maybe in the past it was, and it still is in some ways, but yeah, I mean, it is complicated because I think I want, the goalpost, let's say, the dream is to just make music, not have to worry about other, so oh gosh, sorry,
No, it's good.
not have to worry about other things, like make music, tour, be able to play like big shows
Hmm.
and have a career just making music and playing shows to people and touring. But it's also something where I want that, but I also want to be able to like have flexibility, like live a life that just like makes me happy.
Hmm.
And I think that I'm kind of more in a place where like I do have that goalpost, you know what I mean? Like I want to be selling out Red Rocks and playing shows and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
that's
yeah,
yeah, and anybody, mind you, like yes, this is a generalization, sure, but like I'm sorry, anybody who says that they like don't want to do that, I'm like, you're lying because
yeah.
like we all, if you're playing shows, like you want to be playing big shows.
Right.
Um
Well, I mean, you did say there were people that hate the touring,
totally,
so they
totally.
probably don't want the big. But
Maybe not.
maybe they don't like that version of the touring. But if it were the bigger scale,
Right.
they'd be totally in.
Yeah.
Like, who knows?
I have no qualms about saying like, yeah, I want all of that
Yeah.
very much. But I also, it's something where, I want that and I'm working towards that, and like you mentioned, like I hustle it a lot, like I do. But I also like want to, yeah, like enjoy my life. I think that there's a balance where like I think that some people are like, you kind of have to like, they have this mentality that like if you're not willing to like eat shit until it happens, that you don't want it bad enough. And I'm like, no, I can like enjoy my life and have like a great
Oh, right,
life
right, right.
while working towards that, you know? So I think there's kind of a balance where there is the goalpost, but there's also like, not to sound too cheesy, but like it is so much about that journey and like the ways in which you build. And like my goal is not to be playing tiny clubs for the rest of my life. But if my life worked out to the point where I was touring all the time playing tiny clubs with my friends to small amount of fans that love my music, I wouldn't reject that.
Yeah.
You know, like I like this tour that I did in January. It was like the first like talker tour, because I've toured a ton but like with other people,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
this is the first like talker tour. And yeah, we were playing small rooms. But people came and I was with my best friends and like playing shows and traveling, and I was like having the time of my life, and I was like super happy, and I was like, yeah, this is all that I want to do ever.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah.
So that's a long way of answering your question. But
No,
like yeah,
it's
there's a
good.
goalpost, but also like I just want to be doing all of that on the way there.
Yeah. I mean, that the process is what
Yeah.
I always. Cause you said you gotta. What would you say about the eating shit, or you don't deserve the filet mignon or
Something
something
like,
like that?
yeah, it's that kind of
So,
thing, right?
because I mean it's true because it is hard
Yeah.
and it is work, and if you're not enjoying the process, and you're like if you're doing it for an outcome, if you're doing it to get the big show later on, but you don't enjoy the process of getting there,
Yeah.
then what's the point of even doing it? Because the
Right.
process is the 99.9% of
Yeah.
the work.
And
So
I just don't think that I have to like be like taking every single session, taking every single thing, like writing 10 songs a day with different people,
right,
staying up
right.
till 2 a.m. working. Like, I just don't
Well,
really think that that lifestyle is necessary to make good art.
no, of course not.
I think, if anything, it makes your life only about writing music as opposed to living your life. And I'm like, I don't want to hear songs about writing songs. I want to hear
Right,
songs
right,
about
right.
life.
Experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a balance. And I kind of think, ironically enough, I do believe that it's kind of one of those things about letting go where it's like the less you try to control that outcome,
Just like your writing.
yeah, it's like the less you try to control it, that's when stuff starts happening, because I think you're opening yourself up to more opportunities and like saying yes to more things that maybe might seem like they're outside of the wheelhouse or whatever it might be that ends up opening another door. And it's yeah, I don't know. I'm just trying to kind of practice letting go right now. Kind
Yeah.
of going back to what I was saying earlier too, of like freaking out that I hadn't released more music this year, but then being like, no, I should just like keep my head down and write great music and then release it next year. It's like the same thing. It's like just do what feels right and not, I want to put in the work. I want to set myself up for success, do everything that is within my power and within my control. I think that you do have to like have that
Right. Yeah,
responsibility,
yeah, yeah.
but then like letting it go and seeing where it lands.
So I had a random question that I was thinking about during that.
Yeah.
But were you in school back in the day? What kind of studier were you? Like, were you a cram it at the end, or did you do diligence and pay attention in class, take good notes? Were you the
Um,
overnight crammer?
I was more of like the take notes and pay attention in class type. Like I wasn't too much of a crammer.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it definitely depended on I think it depended on the class.
Oh yeah.
Like it depended on if I was like into the subject or if I just like absolutely did not want anything to do with it. But I was not a crammer. I think I was for a while in high school, and I quickly learned that it's so much more stressful.
Yeah.
So,
'Cause you,
yeah.
oh, no,
No,
because
no, no, yeah.
you kind of described because you're saying the writing 10 songs every day and doing this and doing that. That kind of reminded me of the people in school that would brag about pulling an all-nighter before the big
Right,
exam,
right.
and I'm like, I guess I was never able to do that because at a certain point, there's nothing that goes in. Like you don't
Yeah.
retain
Yeah, yeah,
anything.
yeah. You're just
So I'm
exhausted.
like, there's no way, there's no way that works.
Right, right.
So just go to sleep, show up. You're gonna know what you're gonna know, and
I think, I think too,
it's my
like,
life mentality.
I think that the music industry is like, there are a lot of people, a lot of, I think because of Spotify and streaming,
Hmm.
there are a lot of people who have like a song that goes viral on Spotify or like a song that does well, or they have their EP or whatever. They're very like, or they're just like, oh my God, like TikTok stars who then
Mm-hmm.
like get record deals, stuff like that. That's all fine and dandy. I have nothing against them. Some of them are great, and talented, but I think that when you're looking at timeless artists and people who are going to be like the next wave of Bowie or the Rolling
Mm-hmm.
Stones, it's
Mm-hmm.
like it's people who aren't going through that machine. It's people who are just making their art
Yeah.
and doing their thing. Because that's the kind of thing that stands out. That's the kind of thing that's authentic. And that's the kind of thing that's timeless. It's like a TikTok star can put out a song that has, production that's very like 2020 and sounds like the year 2020,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a place for that, and I love some of that, honestly. It's
Mm-hmm.
fun, but I think that when you're looking at artists that are going to stand the test of time, again, it's just artists that are doing their own thing and doing what feels right to them and waiting for their moment
Yeah, yeah.
and taking it.
That's the weird thing, I guess, in general in media that I'm not sure what your opinion may be on, but when you talk about like the Bowie of our time or and those kinds of personalities that make it and last, like how does one navigate the vastness of, because it's like a different time too. It's like
Mm-hmm.
there's so much available and
Mm-hmm.
standing out. Like I have my answer to it, but how what's your take on tackling that stressful, the stressful thing? I mean, it could you might be repeating yourself on like just letting go, and I
I
don't know if
get,
there's anything different in
yeah.
there.
I mean,
Of
okay, I think a couple things. I think one thing is like being consistent and
that's gonna be my answer.
yeah, 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 being consistent.
Consistent.
Like, for example, I'm on TikTok. I'm terrible at it. I have like
Hmm.
20 followers on TikTok. Like, I don't do it. And I'm
Sure.
like, if I wanted to, I probably could like make some good TikTok content, put out like 3 or 4 TikToks a week, be building shit up. And maybe I will.
Hmm.
Maybe I'll try to do that
I
for a
don't
few
know.
months
I'm not a
before the
TikTok
record.
fan,
Yeah.
but you.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think you kind of have to do all or nothing, where it's like either you're on it or you're not. And so with TikTok, I'm like, okay, I'm either going to delete my TikTok, but for music, it is a good way to get your music out there if you
Hmm.
can get a TikTok that does really well and has your music in it. Like honestly, like a bunch of
Yeah,
like
I've heard
charts
about that.
or yeah.
I forgot who was talking about it, but like having TikTok stars do stuff to your music,
Yeah,
like all
stuff
that
like
kind of,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, there is a place for it in music, and I probably should, like, get with it and make a plan. I just feel like I'm so busy, and I'm like, I don't know. But,
No, there's so much.
yeah. But I think, yeah, consistency. And then I also think, like, while it's important to stand out and be unique, again, it's like, I think it's less about having a viral moment and more about, like, just building up fans. And unfortunately, like, a lot of that comes from touring. But even just like people who listen to your music and find you, it's like I think it's less about trying to stand out and go like be viral and get all these like random followers, and more about having like a genuine relationship with the people who do follow you and
Hmm.
having those interactions that are meaningful on social media with those people, and then building a community from there. Because if you have a community, let's say you have 10,000 followers on Instagram, if all of those people are like people who are invested in your music, invested in your community, that's a lot more meaningful than having 100,000 followers who don't really like give a fuck about what you do.
Hmm.
You know?
Right. Yeah. But I know I agree 100%. I mean, I mean, that's all we can do technically as well, right? Like when you think
Yeah.
about, I guess to de-stress myself in those moments, thinking about, oh my gosh, all this video content everywhere all the time.
Right.
How are you, whatever. So the thought is like, all right, all I can do is be consistent, continue growing, learning, making stuff. And the other thing is being awesome, which is the other aspect too.
Right.
You have to be
Yeah.
consistent and also good at what you do.
Yeah.
And then you just keep going.
Yeah. And like, I don't know, when it comes to like the social media side of it versus like putting out songs consistently, when it comes to social media, it's like it just kind of takes one thing to like weirdly do well. My friend, she is on TikTok. She's always TikToking, and I'm like, I like envy her because she's really good at it. She doesn't like put that much thought into it. She's one of those people that just like
I feel like that's the best way to go about it.
Yeah, it's just like funny, random, dumb things. But every now and then she'll get one that like just goes and flies, you know, and does its thing, and it's like, you know, I think
it's weird.
It's weird.
It's weird how that works.
I know. Yeah.
How do you, I guess to kind of keep that going a little bit, any advice? I found at some point I was trying to search stuff or trying to find videos or your website or something, and searching Tauchar, it's very difficult to find stuff. How does any advice for like?
Well, I mean, what I do is I tell everybody that my like social handles are all Tauchar Celeste.
Yeah.
So if somebody searches Tauchar Celeste, I come up.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, again, I think it's like consistency. Like, the longer you're doing it, like my SEO has gotten way better in the last 2 years than it was before, like at the start. But yeah, like there's still just like a bunch of stuff to sift through.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But it is cool. Like I thought I'd be overdoing it, but I have your Tauchar. I have the Tauchar hat.
Love it.
And I wear it on set because I primarily work as a script supervisor, which is more of a chiller position that doesn't get much attention. So like, I like having the bright cap to be spotted if I'm needed. And I think I like the I like the multi-meaning of it too. Like it's a chill, like it's not. I mean, the color's loud, but the word on it, Tauchar, people have to ask what it means and where it go, and then I'm like, oh, it's an indie artist that I'm a fan of. But it also plays a double meaning of like I'm the quiet guy on set too, and my thing says Tauchar, so it's kind of like a weird thing
hey,
for me.
Tauchar.
Yeah, but that's cool.
I love that.
So, yeah. All right. What's going on? How you doing over there? Are you holding up? Any tea break or anything?
Yeah,
Are you
no,
good?
I'm chilling.
It's nice.
Yeah. It's honestly like really nice out despite like the wind chill.
Yeah, once you get the blanket on, it's
blanket,
good.
I know.
The blanket's added a lot.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask. I'm very curious about. Or maybe there's nothing much there, but you talk about friendship, playing keyboard for them, and your experience with getting to be more on the auxiliary experience, watching them make decisions and watching or the other bands that you've toured with make decisions and incorporating what you learn in the process. I mean, I do the similar thing with directors. Like my job is auxiliary to them, and I assist them, and I get to watch them make decisions all day, and then utilize that in my own work. So, I was curious about some of the best advice that, or let's think about like, how often do people reach out to you and ask for advice on music? And what
honestly, like people do reach out and ask for advice, and sometimes I respond, sometimes I don't because I'm like in the middle of something and I just happen to see it. But it's funny because I don't really have good advice.
You only have bad advice.
I just don't have any advice. I don't know. I'm kind of like, oh, my shoe. I'm kind of like, like I said, I mean, it's just like not the answer that you want to hear ever, right? It's like just kind
Be
of
consistent and work.
be consistent, work, and like then let go and let the chips fall where they may. Because it's true, like honestly, like I like getting involved with friendship was just like a random stroke of timing and like meeting the right person at the right time. And then it also was like being good and like being a good player, but then also being like a good bandmate and someone who like was like I was super new to the music industry at the time, so I really just like wanted to be a sponge and learn and like all that kind of thing. And so there wasn't like a thing that I did, and so that's kind of what I tell people. And I hate getting that advice, mind you. So so I hate giving that advice, but I'm like, that's what it is.
Just be a sponge.
Yeah, and just like do your thing, like go to everything, meet people, work hard, and then like those stars will align at the right moment when they're supposed to, you know?
Yeah. Okay. No, I mean, I've talked, I've only mentioned this once before on the podcast, but I think about, I had the opportunity of talking to one of the biggest people that I look up to, and like I'm a big fan of the Marvel movies, and it's my goalpost is directing a Marvel movie, and I got to talk to the producer of Marvel Studios for a brief moment at a Q&A thing, and I asked him what could I do for you to hire me as a director, and he just like his answer was just make something cool.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, well, of course that's the advice. Just be good.
Yeah, because it is like there's no formula, there's no step-by-step plan. Like everybody's journey is so different.
Yeah, and even people in positions don't necessarily know what they want to hear or what. Yeah,
totally.
Yeah. So you just make something cool.
Yeah.
And
I do believe that, like, if you are consistently putting out really good work and doing the work of like promoting it, meeting people, networking, like the opportunities will come.
Yeah.
I do believe that.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Did you want to talk about the real world? Do you have any strong opinions? How do
I
you
have strong opinions.
I know you
but
have.
I mean, look, here's what I'll say. For everybody wondering, we're recording this on November 7th, the day after Biden's announced the winner of the election.
Correction, it's the 8th.
Oh, it's the 8th. I don't know what time in life is. November 8th. Thank you. Sunday, Biden was projected the winner of the election yesterday.
I don't like the wording of that. Like, I don't like projected winner.
I hate that wording, but
it feels like it's not final yet.
I mean, it is. Look, the fact of the matter is that, like, there's going to be litigation. There are always recounts, mind you. There's going to be litigation. They don't have a case. Biden doesn't even... First of all, he's won Pennsylvania by so much, but he doesn't even need Pennsylvania to win the election, is the other thing. Recounts usually end up getting you, like, an extra 100 votes.
Sure.
So it's just kind of... Or less. So it's just kind of like... The thing about that is, like, I think that the Trump camp, they know that litigation...
So you're getting cold over here.
Go for it. They know that litigation isn't going to change anything. They just want to rile up their supporters.
Oh, yeah. That's what it's about. And it's working.
And it's working, totally. So it's like, you know, this was kind of my thought yesterday. It was like, I am really, really happy that Biden won the election. I am overwhelmed with relief that Trump did not win. Because a Trump win...
It's scary.
It's scary. And it would just... You know... It would be...
It's just a lot of unknowns. So
it's a lot... Well, I don't even know if it's unknowns. It's like...
Kinda.
I think I know.
4 years is a long time. A lot could happen.
I think that we know exactly. It's like an emboldened President Trump with no worry about getting reelected. Can just, a second-term presidency, it's like he can just do whatever he wants. It's just like I think that it would just have been really bad. I think we can all agree. Those of us who are not Trump supporters can all agree that it would have been very bad. But, for me, I think the issue is less. It's like I'm very happy that Biden was was elected, and I think it's super important. But there's also still half of the country that voted for Trump. And I think that while Trump was a terrible president and is a terrible person, I think that Trump is not really the problem. Like, I think that Trump is a symptom of a disease. And I think that that disease still exists. It's just that, I think that getting Trump out of office is a really important step because he's not able to, I think no matter what party it is, once you're not the president anymore, you become irrelevant. Like, sure, we all love to hear from Barack Obama, but he's not, relevant. You know what I mean? Like, he's not the president anymore. He has good stuff to say. He helped campaign for Biden, but he's not the president of the country.
Sure.
And so I think with Trump, it's like, I think it's an important step to get him out of office. I think it's important that the leader of our nation is no longer spreading dangerous rhetoric, dividing our nation, being a terrible diplomat and causing problems with other countries and ruining allyships. I think that's all really important. So I think that getting Biden in was so essential to our country's survival and our democracy's survival. But I think that Biden and his team have a really, really tricky task ahead of de-radicalizing people. I think that's what it is. I think for me it's tough. We can get into it or not. I don't know what your level of wanting to talk about shit is, but for me it's I have some family members that support Trump and I also have family members that do not, but it's difficult because I understand that not everybody who voted for Trump is what we think of when we say a Trump supporter. There are people who have their thing about the economy or their thing about yada yada yada.
They have their one thing or whatever.
Yeah. But for me it's really difficult because I think that in an election like this one, you can't really be a single issue voter. If Trump lowered your taxes by $1,000, that's great. But your ticket is also including family separation, peeling back women's rights, peeling back LGBTQ rights, keeping corporations from having to pay federal income tax, keeping healthcare away from millions. And so it's I get that you think that Trump gave you a slight tax cut, but you can't be a single issue voter in an election like this. Mind you, Trump's tax bill, I was listening to a breakdown of what he had and hadn't done based on his original platform, just objectively looking this is what he ran on, and these are the things that he did or didn't do. And it was he did pass his tax law that he said he was going to pass. It did give middle class working Americans an extra $1,000 to $2,000, but it's it was a trick, honestly, because it was sure, it gave lower middle class people a slight tax break while allowing for corporations to pay nothing in federal income tax.
Right.
It was look here and not here,
Which has always been the strategy.
So that in itself, I'm this wasn't good policy anyway. But yeah, I think that for me it's hard. My relatives who vote for Trump, I know that, for example, sorry, my dad is inevitably probably going to listen to this because he listens to everything that I do because he's very supportive and loving and I love him. But
Hi, Dad.
But I know, for example, that my dad is we've talked about it, and he's kind of one of those people who's when it comes to social issues, he's it's not really my business. If somebody wants the right to have an abortion, it's not really my decision to make. It's not my business what someone's gender identity is. And it's like, I don't think that that's as good as being like, I firmly believe that you should have pro-choice, and I firmly believe in marriage equality and all this stuff. But he's also the type of person where he's like, I don't really have a problem with that at all. Like, your business is your business. So it's like, he's not like this like stereotype of like a hateful Trump supporter. You know what I mean? And there are millions of people that are just like that. And so it's hard because while I recognize that, it's like I said, you can't really be a single issue voter in this kind of an election.
Well, ideally, you're never a single issue voter.
Totally.
But I guess it's heightened here, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, somebody who really cares about the economy or something like that, you can't, the ticket comes with too much other shit. Yeah. And I think that, so anyway, the whole point of kind of what I was getting at is like, you know, for me, it's kind of hard to be like, yeah, let's all come together. Let's unify. Because as much as I don't think division is healthy, I also am like, if somebody voted to like vote against all basic rights for me and a lot of people I know, I can't really reconcile that with wanting to like be nice to them. You know,
I mean, because it's a tough thing, because it's kind of weird. Like California, I was looking at the stats. I think California was like 60-something% Democrat.
Yeah.
But overall, as a nation, it's still so close.
Yeah.
Which is weird. Like
it's
weird to think that many people found some sort of logic on voting for Trump. But
I think, sorry.
No, I was going to say, but I equate it to, like what you said, the single issue thing, and it's the human nature of the selfish, just human nature thinking of, or even just the being turned off by the loudness of certain groups, and it's like, just despite them, I'm going to vote this other way.
Right.
So it's either a negative reason. I mean, selfishness is kind of negative in the first place too.
Yeah.
But
I think America also is like such an individualistic society.
100%.
That it's like,
it's the masks all over again.
Well, exactly. That's why we're literally doing the worst in the world with the pandemic. There's no collectivism. There's no, you know, I might not feel sick, but I could be carrying something, and I don't know if that person's immunodeficient or not, so I'm going to wear a mask for them. You know, it's the same thing. It's not voting with like the greater good and others in mind. And it's and I think that Trump also did a really, really good job of dividing people and painting the left as like communists and like far left socialists, when in reality, like, you know, I think that there's a balance, and quite frankly, Joe Biden is like so centrist. I mean, like, in certain ways he may as well be a Republican, you know what I mean? Like, it's just kind of this funny thing where I'm like, and Kamala Harris is like a cop and a prosecutor and like not, you know, doesn't have the most like leftist background by any means. You know, her track record is very centrist, as is Biden's. And so it's kind of this funny thing where it's like, I think a lot of people, I know a ton of people who are really unhappy that Biden had the Democratic nomination, and like a lot of people would have preferred Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren. I mean, I voted for Bernie in the primaries, but I think that Trump did a magnificent job of painting Biden as a socialist, which just like isn't going to happen. And like, and quite frankly too, like the way that it stands now, not that I think it's a good thing, but like the way that it stands now with the Supreme Court being 6-3 conservative and the Senate being a conservative majority, it's like, there's just no world in which like,
I think the Senate just moved to even.
Well, I mean, the Senate, it's the two runoff races in Georgia are going to decide Senate control. Yeah. So, like, we can hope that they'll be Democrat controlled so
48 or whatever.
Biden can actually get some stuff done. But it's just funny, like, anybody who looks at his policies will see that they're great policies. Like, I just don't really know. Like, it's like,
yeah,
people will just believe anything that they're told, which again, I think that is human nature. I think that people don't have the time to do research. I think a lot of people just aren't as directly engaged. I think that a lot of people have the privilege of not being affected by politics that much. So it's like, I get it, but it doesn't make it okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I have some opinions.
No, it's good. Like, I think about, like, okay, politics has come up a couple times on the podcast, and I'm always trying to figure out how to navigate through it.
Yeah.
Because I was realizing it's hard to have a productive discussion when, let's say, the power that we have is our vote. We're not really here to like directly pass legislation or like work in the whatever. Like, I don't. It's a difficult thing knowing. I mean, you've definitely explored it more than I have on like using your voice to push for voters, and which is awesome. And you're doing a lot of work over. I mean, you've done a lot of work, and yay, California. But like I guess, how do you? What's your thought on I guess to continue your verbiage on like curing the disease, curing the disease.
I don't know how we cure this disease.
Because like, for me, it comes down to personal principles, right? Like, I'm a big fan of accountability.
Yes.
So, I like to hold myself accountable and do things that I say I'm going to do, and like show up on time, and like all that kind of stuff's important to me. So if I just like view, like you said, if you look at Biden's policies, you can just, all right, just look at what he's proposing, and just make your own opinions.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of the weird mental gymnastics that some people do to look at Trump and what he's saying and what he's done over years, and flip it in some sort of way of like, oh, he's doing his best, or like it's a weird thing that how can you not see, like, I guess with accountability. I mean, that's the issue with politics and politicians in general, is it's kind of the history of the system is saying one thing and doing another. But
I think that, I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah, I have a few thoughts on it, and I don't know like how organized they're gonna sound, because they all kind of were coming in as you were talking, like, oh, that and that and that.
Yeah.
But I think there's a few things. I think the first is right, like your own personal accountability.
Right.
I think that okay, despite what I said of like, it's hard for me to wanna like extend that olive branch to anybody who voted for Trump and like voted for somebody who I think is like the worst president in our nation's history, and was like taking us into fascism territory and like ruining our democracy. At the same time, like, yeah, you're not going to have a productive conversation with somebody by demonizing them. That's a fact. And so the thing is, I don't necessarily have any interest in like having that conversation with people I don't know. Unless it's like an organic thing. But I think that if everybody can like talk to their family members and in a loving, empathetic way, I think that is something that may or may not yield a result, but that's something that you can do that's like less daunting than taking on the entire force of people who voted for Trump. It's like, talk to your family members and just like chat about, like, in an empathetic way, about why they felt that way, and like the pros and cons, and seeing if you can like get any message through.
Yeah.
And then I think also just like your own personal, I think while that's important and helpful, I don't know that like not everybody's going to be able to change their family's opinions on something. That's just the name of the game. But I do think that's important. And then I also think that like your own personal activism is important, because it's really easy to feel like you don't have a loud enough voice, or like your actions aren't important enough to make a difference. But it's just so not true. We hosted like a few outdoor like distanced phone banks here over the past couple months. We registered voters in Arizona telling people to vote for Mark Kelly for the Senate. Kelly won. I'm not going to say it was all our efforts, but and we called into Pennsylvania, and we were just like focusing on voter registration, getting Democrats registered to vote, because a lot of people just don't vote.
Yeah.
You know? And so it's like, I think that if you can like just be active in sharing information and just trying to reach out to as many like people who are on your side and make them realize that their voice matters, that makes a big difference. But yeah, I don't know. And as far as like the social media thing, it's like, yeah, for a while I was like, oh, like I don't want to talk about politics because it's like, it's touchy, all this stuff. But it's like, fuck that. It's like, this is what I believe. I'm a whole person. I don't just make music.
Yeah.
Music is one of the most political things. Anybody who says keep politics out of music is living in a fantasy world. Music is political. And I'm going to share my opinions because this is my personal page and I can share what I want.
Yeah, for sure.
And I did have multiple people who reached out to me. I'm going to play with this stick. I had multiple people reach out to me who were like, thank you for sharing this information because I didn't really know. And like, once I realized that even my relatively small platform was reaching people, it was like, okay, I'm going to be sharing information. Like I had a whole thing where I was like sharing information on how to register to vote, how to request a mail-in ballot, the best ways to drop off your mail-in ballot, what the deadlines were, and I kept it as like a little highlight on my Instagram page and stuff like that. And I had people messaging me being like, thank you for posting this because I wouldn't have known, or like, you know, can you share this so that we can see the dates for this? And it does matter. It's making everything as accessible as possible.
Yeah.
You know? So, I don't know. It's just kind of like, I don't know how you de-radicalize people that are so down that rabbit hole.
Like there's a couple of things in motion that I read about recently. I don't know if you've seen them, but like I think John Oliver touched about it on his Last Week Tonight at one point, where he was talking about the Electoral College and trying to switch out how that works.
Yeah.
And having all the states sign up to this one thing that'll make it to where it pretty much will abolish the Electoral College and will just be popular vote wins out. And another thing that I saw going around recently too was how other countries, it's like an automatic, there's no voter registration, and you're just kind of by default allowed to vote.
Like having to register to vote literally is voter suppression.
Right, that's what I was saying. I'm like, oh, interesting. Yeah. It is, isn't it?
Well, it's funny, like my family on my mom's side is German. Like she's
I was going to ask you about
there.
that.
Yeah, and I'm a citizen as well. And she, I just gave myself a splinter. Wow.
That might have been from you that I saw that then. Did you share? I don't know.
Probably. I don't know. But there, when you move, you have to register your address with City Hall. But you just do it anyway. That's just like, you know, you officially, as with here, you officially register that this is your new address, whatever.
Yeah.
And then you're registered to vote in that district. That's all it is. And yeah, everybody's registered to vote. And then in like some places, like in Australia, there's compulsory voting, which it's like, and which I can totally hear the right wing freak out of personal freedoms as I say it, but it's like, it's a great thing actually. It's compulsory voting, so it's like you're registered to vote, you're sent a ballot, you're supposed to vote, but you could literally like cross out or write some random bullshit in the ballot and send it in if you want. And if you don't want to vote, it's like, okay, every like 2 or 4 years you pay a $50 fine to not vote. But I think, you know, at the end of the day, it's
so you mean like you're okay, so in that scenario you are kind of penalized for not voting? Is that
in Australia? And I might have the details like a little bit wrong about that, but it's kind of the type of thing where it's like they send you a ballot. You don't have to vote for anybody. You could just send it right back. And it's ranked choice, so you can write like your order of choices of who is the president. And if you don't want to participate at all, you pay like a small fine. And I can, I can hear the personal liberties arguments, but it's like, it's your civic duty, and you don't have to actually really participate. You can literally just send your ballot back, you know? And I think that if everybody were like required to participate, or even if they weren't required like it is in Australia, but I think like if everybody were just given access, it'd be so much easier. My friend like said this thing which was like, is it voter fraud, or is it giving access to everybody to vote?
Right. Yeah.
So, it's like in Georgia, Stacey Abrams leading the charge to register 60,000 voters that had been in disenfranchised areas before. It's like, that's not fraud, that's just registering more people to vote.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So for those that aren't, we are, I was going to comment on trying to survive the chiller temperatures out here that are coming in.
Yes.
Let's see what else I can squeeze in here before we call it good. I guess all right, I don't know what to say. I was thinking about how I try to think about why I think the way that I do think, and why others around me think similar. Well, it's because I'm in the arts. I'm in the creative space where I actively have pursued trying to figure myself out and what I bring to the table, and expressing myself and how I feel is like what we do. So it's interesting to think back on like my before times on when I was trying to figure out myself, or other people around me that are so, I guess, like, let's say like you mentioned your dad, like my dad doesn't, he's like the classic manly man, mechanic, and I have no idea what his opinions are.
Right, yeah.
He just doesn't express himself in general. So I'm like, it's hard to be like the artsy son trying to open up your father.
Right.
So it's it's nice being comfortable with expressing yourself. And it's difficult to get there, though.
I think that so many people have problems expressing themselves, men in particular, and I think that that's where a lot of like anger problems and violence problems come from. And the whole like quote unquote toxic masculinity, it's like, it's no one's fault, or like individually, like men are brought up that way. And obviously this is a generalization.
Sure.
But like,
it's just history.
And I think that men are encouraged to not show their emotions and to hold it in and be strong and all of this stuff, and to express their emotions in a masculine way as opposed to a feminine way, even though there is no masculine or feminine,
right.
like quote unquote, it's like a healthy way versus an unhealthy way is like more what it is, right?
There you go.
But it's like, and I also think too, like, thinking about like the reason that I have like the opinions that I do and the worldview that I do, I think that I totally think there's merit in what you said about like doing active soul searching, working in a field like, okay, I talk about this with my mom a lot because of her like background, and Germany, they're a strong economy, they're very like working class kind of thing too, but there is a different cultural mindset, and she and I talk about it a lot, where in America, it's so, like, capitalism is so important for American values, just making money, just climbing that ladder, and I think, like, just, like, there always has to be a purpose for something. There always has to be a reason that you're doing this creative project, a reason that you're going on this trip. Everything, like,
Right.
I don't think that, like, there's enough of just, like, doing things for the sake of doing them and enjoying life and, like, having things be slow paced. And I think that people in this country don't get enough time off. Like,
That's true.
the minimum in most European countries is like 6 weeks when you start.
6 weeks a year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that might have changed in some places, you know, I'm just speaking to what I've known in the past, but here it's like 2. You can't, I mean,
it's not, yeah.
You don't have time to actually take a vacation once you take a sick day here or a day off here or a personal day here or do a weekend trip here. And so I think that because of that, a lot of people don't have the time to really relax, really unwind. I think that leads to extreme high levels of anxiety and anger problems. And I also think that that causes you to not have enough time to really explore the world around you. I think that people not having enough time off and having this speedy mentality is why you see the rise of, like, 10 cities in 10 days, the European bus tour, where you're only talking to other Americans and you're there for, you know what I mean? Like, I think that is, it's no one's fault. I think that people just don't have time for more than that half the time. But it's like, I think that if there were more of an emphasis placed on, like, really, like, work and making money not being the end-all, be-all, most important thing, then I think that, like, we'd see a lot. I don't know that that's, like, the objective answer, but, like, I do think that we would see people, like, having a lot more empathy for other cultures and people, like, immigrants and people who have different backgrounds. You know, I think in California, we're very blessed to live in a very multicultural place where you don't even have to leave and you can hear tons of different languages and meet people from all over. But, you know, and this isn't a knock to middle America, but, like, if you're living in middle America in a small town, you're not really going to be interacting with anybody who doesn't look like you. And it's, you know, it's gotten more diverse in years past for sure, but it's like the culture is so different. And I think that in general, like, people should be given the opportunity to explore more just for the sake of it, to interact with others, and to just have some time off, not be so
like I
tightly wound all the time.
I think about man, you said so much.
I know. I was like, I'm really talking for a long time here, but
no, it's good. Time off. That's what people are gifted with COVID.
I know.
in some instances. But then again, there was no opportunity to really experience the world.
Right, it's
You're
like
stuck with yourself.
Time off at your house.
Which is still time.
Groundhog
That's
Day.
time to think about who you are.
Yeah.
But yeah, if there was I like the idea of a priority. I don't know what the word would be, but the physical health, mental health.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of what you're talking about too. You didn't mention physical health. That's just as important.
Part of
they're both super important. And then
you have to, like, show. I mean, I do think that might change after COVID now, but it should. But it's like you're expected to show up to work unless you're, like, dying.
Well, because that's the issue with I don't know, like, that's not really a forefront of the discussion a lot of the times. They're not really mentioning becoming healthier. They just say stay indoors. They don't. But healthier is, like, the biggest thing you could be doing is strengthen that immune system.
Yeah.
But as far as mental health goes, like, I think about, I really enjoyed this last year of reading. Because I set the goal randomly because I wanted to be a better person or like whatever.
Yeah, totally.
So I did my half an hour a day goal of reading. And I mean, because I guess I saw all those studies of, like, people who read are happier, people who read are more empathetic. And then, of course, I don't have the luxury of traveling all the times, and reading is another way to put yourself in other people's shoes.
Completely. It is such an escape. You know, you're not on your phone.
which is huge.
Yeah, and exactly, like you're reading about other times, other cultures. Yeah,
Different
I think
writers,
that's
all that stuff.
so, yeah, that's a big part of it too. But yeah, and that's, and that's the kind of thing we're talking about this. It's like, it's such a cultural shift that needs to happen if we're actually going to be like healthier as a nation. And I don't just mean like physically and mentally, but I just mean like our existence. It's like, life is not about working and making money. It's great when you are fulfilled by your work, and it's great when you make money.
I have the same thing. I always say it's not about the money. That's what I tell people when I'm like,
Right.
I'm just here because I love it, and sure, give me the paycheck or
I'm
whatever.
I would love to make a lot of money with music, like obviously, but like I was saying earlier, right? It's like, yeah, I want to be headlining Red Rocks, but also like, I also want to just like tour with my friends and play small shows too. Whatever works, whatever happens.
Yeah, you're saying you're going to be doing it regardless.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And my kind of last thought on all of this too is when you were saying earlier, choosing this profession of that kind of leads you to work with other people and be empathetic and all this stuff. I think we've also chosen professions where you don't make that much money unless you like really make it and then you make money.
Sure.
So I think it's like we already like kind of have left that mindset of like the capitalistic.
It's not important to us.
Yeah, right. That's not the goal. That's a great outcome. You got to survive, and if you can make some nice money while you do it, that's great. But it's not about that. And so I think that already like pulls you a little bit out of that toxic culture. So that's my thought on that.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
It's nice to talk about it. I felt really productive.
I know. I hope I don't sound super preachy to anybody.
You don't.
It's just, I think there are a lot of great things about this country and a lot of great things about a lot of people living here. And I also think that there's like a lot of problems and a lot of things that are not sustainable.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I'll have us end on that.
Yeah.
It feels good, and I'm getting cold.
Me too.
But I guess last thing I did want to say was thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Let's have, or I'll have you plug your socials really quick.
Yeah.
But I did want to say, I guess as far as the physical health goes, I've been hitting the gym for the first time in like years and stuff because of my apartment opened one up or whatever. But what I was actually going to say was that your wax is what I gym to.
Yeah! Oh my god, amazing. That's so funny. I've never thought of it as like workout music.
Yeah. Like, so much of the reading, it's kind of like as long as I'm doing it, I feel like it's productive. And then the wax EP is like a good length. It's like a half an hour about. Yeah. So I start it. And then by the end, I'm like, all right, that was a good workout. That was good.
That's so funny.
And it ends with
personal space.
Personal space, and I love the climax of that too.
Yes,
like
you're
just
like push through.
The energy in there gets me pumped up.
That's so funny. Oh my god, I love that.
So you talk about your music, kind of getting into emotional spaces, but like, yeah, like it I don't know. I utilize it for.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So.
Yeah. That's awesome. I have to like either listen to podcasts or like pump up music. I'm like, otherwise I can't. But
yeah, I found a way to, I don't know, like
channel that emotional energy.
Yeah, like I grew up on Linkin Park, so that like sad but upbeat.
Yeah.
Like this, it kind of gives me that similar vein where it's not necessarily like it's not designed to amp you up all the time, but for whatever reason it works for me, so it's very cool.
That's awesome.
But all right, sweet. I don't know, we can find your music on
all platforms: Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, all that good stuff,
and then Instagram
and yes, all of my socials are at Tauchar Celeste, CELESTE. But yeah, every platform: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that is Tauchar Celeste.
Sweet.
And
all right, great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.